All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Cyrus Janssen, and it has been a long time since I have done a YouTube live stream. I was looking back, just on my YouTube record, and I saw it's been almost 2 months since I've been here live on YouTube. And I wanted to get back to doing a live stream. And I love always connecting with you guys. I love, I love the live streams because it allows me to be a little bit more casual and also to interact with all of you, answer questions, and kind of share with you a lot about what I've been doing, some future goals that I have, and most importantly, what I'm going to be sharing in today's episode is my recent travel to America. Just freshly back from California, was able to spend a great 7 days there, and just had a really great time. And most importantly, I think many of you might have seen if you had watched my video that I made, the journey from Vancouver, Canada to Los Angeles, which pre-COVID was so common. It's a 2-hour flight. I mean, it was just so easy for, Canadians and Americans to go back and forth between the two countries. It's quite amazing as America and Canada are the largest trading partners, for each country. And the border has been closed this entire time. It's very difficult to get over the border. Even right now, there's very strict rules on, for example, vaccination. You must be vaccinated to be able to get over the border. And it's just amazing how our lives have been affected by COVID. Obviously, everybody knows that. Everywhere, wherever you are in the world, you most definitely have experienced that as well. So the goal with today's live stream is I just want to share some insights that I learned from my travels in America. It was very interesting for me, having been 2 years locked out of my own home country. I actually, this is the interesting thing I want to share. As an American citizen, I've always been able to get across the border. As an American citizen, you are never will be denied entry into your home country. It's impossible. So no matter what's happening in the world, I will always be able to go back to America. Problem is that for me, is returning back to Canada, I was always required to do a 2-week quarantine. And many of you know that I have 3 children. So, I got a business, wife, 3 children. It doesn't make sense for me to go down to America and then have to, quarantine by myself in a hotel for 2 weeks. So that was really the big thing that was limiting me, is the 2-week quarantine coming back. So now what's happened here in Canada is that if you are double vaccinated, you are able to avoid the 2-week quarantine upon arrival back into Canada. So that's the big game changer. And that's essentially how I was able to travel. So what we decided to do for this trip to California is, it was actually really sweet. We did not tell my our children that we were going to go to America. We didn't tell them that we were going on an airplane. Obviously, all the young kids, they really love to travel. And it was really fun because we left on a Friday. So we pulled my daughter out of school on the Friday, and we said, we woke up a little bit early because there was a morning flight. So woke her up at 6 a.m., which she normally gets up around 7:30, 8 o'clock. And, we're like, "Hey, honey, do you want to go on an airplane?" And she's just kind of dazed and confused. And she's like, "Great, yes." And the other interesting thing is that we didn't tell her um, that my parents were actually going to fly out from Florida. So this was a big surprise for her. And it's been very difficult because I think this is really why I wanted to share that video of my travel, my return back to America, because I really wanted to give some hope to everybody out there. I know that many people around the world are still disconnected from their families. I know, for example, many of my expat friends that are living in China. This is a very difficult thing in China right now, is that they are unable to leave China. Life is good in China. They have work visas. They're doing very well with their jobs. But the problem is that there's no guarantee if they leave that they can get back into the country, because China does have one of the strictest and best controlled COVID scenarios. So in an effort to really control COVID, they're very strict on that, and so it's very difficult. Obviously, as expats, we do like to go back to our home countries. We do like to reconnect with our families, and that's been a tough thing. So I know that there's many people that are still disconnected from their families. So I wanted to show that video of my daughter going through the airport, seeing her grandmother for the first time, reconnecting. Try to give some hope to people, that life will return back to normal at some stage. And yeah, I mean that we're slowly getting there, slowly getting there. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. Just a little bit about America, what I thought about it, and I'd love to answer some more questions that you have. And so let's go ahead and let's jump into the chat here and see how everybody is doing. So thanks everybody for joining. We just got over 100 people right now. Yin, thank you so much. Nashalongo, good afternoon to you as well. Neho Cyrus. All right, I see we've got already our first troll in here. So we'll put this guy in a timeout with his spamming. Nisikto May, Cyrus, I have not had anything to eat this morning. Guten Abend, mein Cyrus. Yeah, I love all these languages in here. Wang Dejong, ni hao ah, bonjour, como se va? Wow, we've just got so many different things in here. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right. Yeah, Cyrus, you're a well-exposed individual. Great to know we have an open-minded people like you in YouTube to share your experiences with people that is not that fortunate. Yeah, this is really what I really want to. This is what I always try to do. I mean, this is the interesting thing. I've been an expat for 15 years now. 10 years in China, coming up on 5 years now in Canada, and it'll be 5 years in March. It will be my 5-year anniversary of coming to Canada. So I've spent a very large portion of my life living outside my home country, and I think it's actually a blessing, because I think what's really interesting about America, and this is one of the first things that I noticed when I went back, is you do see America has a tremendous amount of pride. I think I would say that Americans might be the most patriotic people in the world. And so there's just a very interesting thing. Like, for example, when I see the United States government are saying, Chinese people are becoming more nationalistic. I kind of think of this as a double standard, because I feel, Chinese people are also becoming very patriotic. Chinese people are very proud of their country as well. If you're Chinese, you have a lot of things to be proud of. Your country has done very well in the last 30 years. And I think, we cannot control where we're born. I think every Chinese person is going to be proud of, being Chinese, being born in China. That is something that all of us can't control. But I think for me, being born in America, we are always taught in America that America is the best. We're number one in the world. And I think what's really important, and this is why I always encourage everybody, doesn't matter where you're from in the world, I do encourage people you have to go abroad. And that's probably my best advice to give to especially teenagers and young adults that are graduating university. If you're in your young 20s, get outside, go travel around the world, start learning and start appreciating the many different cultures that we have in this world, and realize that yes, America is a great country, but there's a lot of great countries in the world, and there's things that America can learn from other countries, to really benefit. And I'll tell you, I mean, being here in Canada, I've learned a lot about Canada, and it's quite amazing how different Canada is from the United States. I'll be honest, I went to China before I went to Canada. I grew up in Florida, so Canada was never close to Florida. It's quite far away. It's about as far as you can get from Canada. And so, I was never really close to the Canadian border. I never traveled to Canada until I was probably almost 30 years old. So I was, I knew much more about China, having lived and working in China, than I did even Canada. And as a result, a lot of Americans tend to just think of Canada as, oh yeah, they're, our neighbors, pretty much the same. But if you talk to Canadians, it's like, well, there's a very big difference between America and Canada. So again, I think that's what's just so important, to get outside and travel. So I thank you guys for saying that. Let me see. Liebe Grüße aus Deutschland. Thank you, John. Fantastic. Love speaking some German. That's my mother is from Germany. Um, yeah, press that like button, guys. Yeah, you know what's interesting, Masana, you brought up a really good point here. He asks in German, why are Germans not proud of being German? And I've actually spoken to this with many people, many Germans, and this is a very big cultural insight. The best answer that I've ever heard about this was, I was talking to somebody in Wiesbaden, which is just near Frankfurt. That's where my mother grew up, in Wiesbaden, and he's so in 2011 I became a citizen of Germany as well. I got my dual citizenship from my mother, and I was always saying, like, I'm so proud to be German too. And I realized, like, Germans don't typically say that. You don't really see Germans say that, and it really does go back to a little bit of the history. In Germany right now, a tremendous amount of education is given about the Holocaust, about the past history. German curriculum teaches almost for about a year. I think in fourth grade, about 1 year of study is given to the Holocaust, because they're saying, we have to really dedicate a lot of time to this, because this can never happen in history again. And you must study history so you don't make the same mistakes again. And I remember this German man. He said, "Well, yes, I love Germany. I mean, I'm born here. I live here. This is my home country. But no one determines. You cannot control where you're born. So he said, it's just kind of odd to me to say, like, I'm proud to be German. It's not like I chose to be German. But that being said, it's not that I'm ashamed. It's just a different culture, even there. Americans will always say, yes, I'm proud to be American. America's the best. But Germans are a little bit more reserved in that. And I do believe it goes back to the history, and that is actually really, really, really good questions. And so, anyways, I think it's how is Canada different from the states, Stephen? That's a good question. I probably want to actually make a YouTube video about this, because there's a lot of differences. I mean, what I find in Canada is that you have. But people always ask me, Cyrus, what's the biggest difference between America and Canada? And I say, everything. This is kind of my de facto answer. Everything that you love about America, you can find here in Canada. So, for example, if you love these conveniences of life, like, for example, your Amazon deliveries, you have your, maybe it's your favorite foods or your restaurants, like your cable TV, kind of all the comforts of home in America. We have almost the same thing here in Canada. It's a very similar type of lifestyle. But I would say that everything you don't like about America is not here in Canada. And the two biggest ones that come to mind are, the amount of racism that does exist. Obviously, racism does exist in Canada, but it's at a much lower level than what you would find in America. But I think Canada, I would say, is a much more united country. I do truly believe that, and that goes to the other one, is the political difference. In America, right now, it is very divided. You're either right or you're left. You're either red or you're blue, and it's very, very segregated right now in America. In Canada, I feel that the left and right is much closer to the middle, which that middle ground, of course, is the fact that everybody's Canadian. So, and this is a really important fact that that people need to understand, and I want to talk about this because it's been fascinating for me to learn. Canada's democracy, I feel, is actually a much better system than America's, because Canada has five political parties that really represent the entire country. And what you have is you have oftentimes multiple parties working together in order to get laws passed. And this is a very big contrast to America because right now, for example, when Joe Biden won the presidency, Mitch McConnell, the Republican senator, he said, now that Joe Biden has won the presidency, our entire goal is to block every single thing Joe Biden and his administration is going to try to do. We're just going to try to basically block them on everything. And for me, that's a very unhealthy system. You have to, and for me, that's actually undemocratic because in a democracy, for example, you must have, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser in the election. And this is why I really, really aggravates me when I went back to America and I heard people say, Joe Biden stole the election. He's not the president. Donald Trump is the real president. And I'm like, you can't say that. Because if you say that, that means that you basically, you're undermining America's democracy, and you're making us look like an idiot on the world stage. Because again, if our democracy in America can't function, we're supposed to be kind of the shining example to the world about democracy, but yet within our own country, we have people that still, you know, years later are saying, Joe Biden stole the election. And that's really just, you're sad that you lost, and I get it. Donald Trump ran a very good campaign in 2020. He received a tremendous amount of votes. I think 150 million votes around there. So, a lot of people wanted Donald Trump for a second term. And again, you can't go to say, Joe Biden stole the election. You have to realize that, there's going to be a winner and loser. And I think what you have to realize is, okay, well, Joe Biden won. Fair enough. The Democrats have the office for the next 4 years. You're obviously going to have different views than them, but you need to see where you can come together and and you need to have bipartisan parties. You have to have people working together, and that's the big thing that is missing right now in America. When you have somebody come out and say, "We're going to block everything that Joe Biden does. We don't want him to do anything." How is your country going to move forward? And so I definitely saw a lot of frustration, I would say, with many people. American people, they don't like talking about politics. I mean, the thing is that what we realize is that nothing really gets done. We can chat about it and debate it, but I think what we've seen is that if you're blue, you want to hang out with your blue friends. If you're red, you want to hang out with your red friends, but you don't want to really battle but amongst each other because that's not really going to go anywhere. And that's kind of what I observed. Um, to kind of Yeah, so that's a big difference, I'd say, between Canada and China. I'm sorry, between Canada and America is, I feel Canada is a much more united country. I really do, and I think that, I'm not trying to say that America is not. Americans are very patriotic. I think all Americans love the country, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I really enjoyed being back in America. When I flew into LAX, one of the first things that I noticed was the tremendous amount of diversity that we have in America. Just for some context, I live in Richmond, British Columbia. Richmond is a predominantly Asian community here. We have about 70% of the population is Asian. So for me, it's great, coming from China, moving to Richmond, it's a very similar feel. There's, Chinese people, Japanese, many people from all over the world, all over Asia are here in Richmond. One of the things that's interesting, though, is that you do not see, for example, a lot of Hispanics in Vancouver. You do not see a lot of Africans in Vancouver. And so going into the LAX airport, I probably saw more African Americans in about 10 minutes in LAX airport than I have the last 2 years here in Vancouver. We just don't have a lot of Africans here in Vancouver. And it was great. I just said, wow, this is really nice. It's great to connect with people. And, for example, one of the guys I was chatting with at when we were getting our luggage out, he was wearing an LA Dodgers hat. And I said, oh, how the Dodgers doing this year? I haven't been following baseball. And he's like, oh yeah, we're defending World Series champions. We're going to have a good, we're going to have a good playoff run right now. And And anyways, I was like, "Yeah, my first time back in 2 years." And, he's just like gives me a fist bump and he's like, "Welcome home, buddy. Great to see you." And I was like, "Yeah, great to be home." And that was really a nice interaction. And the funny thing is we were staying at an Airbnb house, and in the neighborhood that we were staying in was predominantly Hispanic. Right across the street was a local supermarket, and everybody inside was Spanish speaking. Everybody from the staff members to the people that shop there. As soon as you walked in, you knew this was a very Hispanic market. And one of the big differences is in Canada, you cannot buy alcohol in like a convenience store or a grocery store. You have to go to a designated liquor store. That's the only place that you can buy alcohol in Canada. And meanwhile, in America, you can buy alcohol pretty much anywhere. You can buy it at a gas station, at a grocery store. So I wanted to get a case of beer because my dad and I were home, and we wanted to have a few beers. So I walk in the supermarket, and I kind of had a cultural. I was like, "Oh, wait, I wonder if I can buy beer here. Oh yeah, I'm not in Canada. I can buy beer here." And so I went over to the lady and I said, "Excuse me, do you sell beer?" And she just kind of looked at me and it's like, "Oh, lo siento, no comprende." Sorry, I don't understand. And I said, "Oh, no problem, no problema. ¿Dónde está la cerveza? Where's the beer?" And she's like, "Oh, nueve, number nine." I was like, "Oh, great, aisle nine, perfect." And it was fun because, like, I, speak a little bit of Spanish, having grown up in Florida, but again, like, hadn't really seen any Hispanic people, in a long time here in Vancouver. So that's just a really kind of a really neat cultural experience that I had, while going back to America. And again, America does have a great melting pot of people and great diversity. And interesting enough, I mean, you could say the same thing where in that area that I lived in LA, there wasn't really a lot of Asian people. So if you were traveling from LA and went to Vancouver, you'd be like, "Oh wow, there's a lot of great Asian people here." So that's the nice things about going between America and Canada, and again traveling around the world. So this is one of the things that I wanted to share with you. But I want to tell you a little bit about the journey because it really wasn't that easy in order to make this trip happen. One of the things that I want to talk about specifically about COVID and the cost of this. So, in order to leave Canada, it cost us 129 Canadian dollars per person, and we're five people in our family. And that is what's required by the Canadian government. It's actually by the airlines. So we flew Air Canada. In order to get on your Air Canada flight, you have to provide a negative COVID test within the last 72 hours. So all five of us had to go to a local clinic. I shared that in my video if you're interested to see kind of what that clinic looks like in that process. So we went through there. We all got a negative COVID test. That allowed us to go on the airplane. Flying down, when you fly into America, America is never going to ask you any questions about COVID. And this was an interesting thing, I think, for example, many of you probably follow Matt from Jayo Nation. When he flew from, I think he flew from China to Paris, France, and from Paris, France back to Michigan. And he had all of his documentation ready, and he's just like, okay, he went to the customs officer, and it's like, okay, I've got all my documents ready, and the officer's just like, "Yep, you're an American citizen. Welcome home." And he's like, "Wait, you don't want to? Do you want to know where I've been? Do you want to know what I've been quarantining?" He's like, "No, you're good. Just go ahead and you're good to go." And so it's kind of a big cultural shock, I think, for Matt. He was expecting, wow, like you don't want to know where I've been or anything. So when you're flying into America, America's fine. They don't really care, where you've been, what you've been doing. You're in the country, that's fine. There's no quarantine period. And this is a big difference between Canada and the US. In the United States, there has never been a quarantine period that's been enforced on a federal level or even a state level. When you're flying in, might be in the state level. I think if you're traveling, I think like New York, for example, potentially. I could be wrong on that. Maybe New York or some of the other states might have had a local law, but certainly not on the federal level. In Canada, there has been a federal mandate that when you are flying into Canada, again, you've had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and that was the big hindrance to me traveling before. So anyways, the interesting thing was is you fly back to America, no problem, welcome in, you're good to go. And then in order to leave America and get back to Canada, what we're required to do then is to take a PCR test. And the PCR test is well, there's actually two tests. You can take a rapid antigen test and a PCR test. The rapid antigen test just goes into the into the front part of the nostril, and you get a result within 20 minutes. The PCR test goes all the way up, and takes about, hmm, how long does it? It takes about really about 24 to 48 hours to get those results. And so you need the PCR test in order to get on the plane to get back to Canada. So the PCR test cost $150 US each. But thankfully, my any child under the age of 5 doesn't need to have any test in order to leave America. So we just had to do that times three for my daughter. My daughter's 6, and I have twin boys that turned 3. So those were the costs, and so again, it's just a very big contrast to what how easy it was for us to travel before. Now there's a very big process to travel. The key thing for us though is that we felt it was really it was fine to pay that fee because obviously we haven't traveled in 2 years. It was fine to pay that fee because we haven't seen my parents in 2 years. So it was really nice to you do what you have to do, right? I mean, at some point you have to go back and see your family. I see Haza is in here. Haza, thank you for joining today, buddy. I see you in the comment section. I know that you just went back to Australia. Left China back to, so you're 14 days hotel quarantine in Australia, and I know that you're quarantining back in China now for I know at least 21 days. So definitely difference. And I think that is one of the things that this is one of the interesting things about America that Americans will really love is that Americans value freedom more than anything. That is a very big cultural difference that I mean Americans are willing to die for freedom. That is because that is our culture and how we go back. And this is why again you have to study history because the way that America was founded was that we separated from the British. We won our independence from the British, and from day one we were involved in an international conflict. From day one we were grabbing our guns and we were fighting for our independence. So from the very first day that America was founded, freedom, fighting for independence, sticking up for yourself, this has been kind of the American value, and that has been ingrained in every American until today. And so that is, and that is one of the things that I also noticed. For example, I went to Disneyland, and I was, while I'm standing in the lines to go on the rides with my kids, I noticed a lot of American shirts that I saw, and maybe it was just because I've been outside of America for a long time. I just didn't really realize. I haven't, I'm not sure if this is a new trend or maybe I've just been removed from America for a long time, but I saw a lot of very patriotic shirts, and this is an interesting thing that again, this is what I see a double standard because let's say that a Chinese person were to come out and it just says like, 我爱中国, I love China, or I'm proud to be Chinese, or I support the China government, or I love China. Like if an American saw a Chinese person wearing that, or even the US government, they'd be like, well, China's brainwashing their citizens to love the government. Meanwhile, in America, we saw some images, for example, where people wear, it says, 1776, we are not born of weak men. And 1776 is, when we signed the Declaration of Independence. That's when America began. And it goes, and so it had all of the old guns and American flags. And it's like, we are not born of weak men. We are strong men. And I mean, you could certainly say that that's very a nationalistic or even propaganda, shirt. I mean, you could really classify that as. But in America, that is a lot of people are wearing these very patriotic shirts. I saw another guy that had a shirt and it had a big American flag, and it says like "Always be ready." And I was just like, what does that mean? Always be ready for what? Like what are we always ready for? Always ready for war? Always ready to defend ourselves? So I see a very rising trend in there. One of the things that's very interesting when you go to America, that is a very big difference here in Canada. In Canada, I would definitely say that Canadians, they're most definitely proud of being Canadian. Canadians most definitely love Canada. But if you go to a typical neighborhood in Canada, at least here in Vancouver, it's very rare to see Canadian flags on the doors of houses or on the house. There's not a lot of Canadian flags flying. And, I was in my local neighborhood in Anaheim. We had stayed at an Airbnb, and it was amazing. There is a lot of American flags that are on display outside the home. People, a couple guys had their garages open. They're working on their cars. Big American flag in the backdrop. I saw several bumper stickers, like it just says Iraq, Iraq veteran, Vietnam veteran, Vietnam veterans getting older now. My father's a Vietnam veteran, but there's a lot of these. I served in Afghanistan, I served in Iraq, I served here, I served there, and it's very much a symbol of pride, that you have done that. And I mean, and this is again, this goes to our culture. The military is always respected in America. We are always taught in America that freedom isn't free. Freedom is given to you because of the military that's going around the world fighting for your freedom. I mean, I don't really believe in that, to be honest. I think that if you look at I mean, there's 206 sovereign states in the world. About 190 of them have very similar freedom to America. Canada, for example, I mean, there's not really anything that you can't do in Canada that you can't do in America. I mean, the freedoms are the same. Germany, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. I mean, all of these countries around the world, there's a lot of freedom, but it's interesting when you go to America, it's almost kind of feels that it's almost like we feel that this is some mutually exclusive thing. It's like we're the only ones with freedom. Like we got to protect this freedom. And again, it just really goes down to, this cultural difference. Now, everybody, we've just passed 300 people here in the chat. So I want to thank you all for joining me. And I have a little video that I'm going to share with you from my time in California. Let's go ahead and play that for you.
Well, everybody, I have to say it does feel quite amazing to be back here in California and visiting one of my favorite spots in all of America, Laguna Beach. It's a beautiful day here at the Montage Hotel. It's quite amazing. Actually, there is a convention that's going on. There's about 100 business professionals meeting for some type of meeting. They're just having lunch behind me. But very much it seems to be business as usual here in America. Here in California, there are some of the strictest COVID rules. And this is what's really interesting when you compare the United States, is that when you have a situation like COVID, it really does seem that it goes state by state, and every state has their own regulations. So for example, my parents come from Florida, which is a very Republican state. Florida is known for its very open policies with COVID. Pretty much you don't need to wear a mask everywhere you go. Everything is optional, as opposed to California, a little bit more of a liberal society here, and face masks are required wherever you go. That being said, I mean, here in California, for what I'm observed these last few days, Disneyland is open. It's packed to full capacity. Again, you've got a convention here with over 100 people. Everybody's behind me eating lunch together, not socially distancing. So it really does seem that business is as usual here in America, and everybody is just choosing to, kind of proceed and living with this COVID-19. It has shifted very much from a pandemic to an endemic here in America, realizing that, COVID-19 is going to be a part of our lives moving forward for at least a while. Thankfully, vaccination rates are going up. Thankfully, face masks are required here in California. So again, when we're ever at going through the hotel lobby or things like that, we are required to wear the face mask. But it's quite fascinating to be back here and just reconnect with my home country again.
All right, so a little clip there that I shared from California, and I mean, I was visiting this area. This is Laguna Beach, which is a very beautiful spot in California. My aunt and her family, I got a couple cousins that live in that area, so we just went there for a little casual lunch, and just had a walk around there. I mean, obviously you can see the background there is quite beautiful, and this is definitely. The one thing that I shared in my video earlier that I want people to understand, it's really interesting, being a content creator, talking specifically about China. A lot of people, it was amazing the comments that I received from people when I announced that I'm going back to America, comments on YouTube and on Twitter, basically people saying like, Cyrus, you have to be careful. You're going back to America. It's going to be so dangerous for you that you are pro-China. And everyone's like, don't become arbitrarily detained. Are you going to make it back to Canada? A lot of these, funny comments. And I have to say, I mean, I had no worries, obviously, going back to America. I know, I mean, and this is what I want people to understand. I am not really pro-China or pro America. I mean, I want everybody to win. I mean, of course I love America. I am, at the end of the day, I'm an American citizen. America, I spent the first 23 years of my life living in America. I'm very grateful for a lot of opportunities that America gave me. And so, that's the interesting thing. For example, being here in Canada, somebody had asked me. I'm actually have submitted my application to become a Canadian citizen. So, side note, that's I'm currently in the process to become a Canadian. And some people. One of my friends was interesting. He is a dual citizen, and he was born in Florida to Canadian parents, and then at the age of 18 months, he left Florida and came back to Canada. So for him, he's Canadian. I mean, he doesn't have really any connection to Florida other than the fact that he was born there and he lived his first 18 months there. Obviously, 18 months, you don't remember anything. So for him, there was a big issue with tax, and he actually renounced his American citizenship, because of tax reasons. And he'd asked me the same thing. He was like, "If you become Canadian, would you renounce your American citizenship, for tax purposes?" And I said, that's a really difficult thing to do because I'm American. I mean, that's going to be my home country forever. It doesn't matter, where I go in the world. And like I said, I could live for the rest of my life overseas. I'm always going to be American. And this is what I really want people to understand. As if you've been following this channel, I'm very much pro America and pro China in the sense that I want both. I want everybody to win, but I'm also pro Kenya. I'm pro, Australia. I'm pro everybody. Like I don't. There's no country that I hate in the world. I want everybody to. This is where I want people to try to get together, and this is why I'm trying to build bridges and do the content that we do, so that we can, hopefully have a little bit better dialogue about China because we have to realize that China is going to be part of our world moving forward. One of the things that I do want to share, one of the interesting things that I observed is I saw a question here. Somebody asked, Cyrus, did you go to Disneyland? I did go to Disneyland. I did take my kids to Disneyland. Disneyland was really fun. It was a lot of fun. It was really good because I grew up in Orlando, right? I grew up as a Disney World kid. We used to have annual passes as kids. As an Orlando resident, you get a really good rate to go growing up. So I went to Disney hundreds of times as a child, growing up in Orlando, Florida. But it was really great to take my kids to Disneyland, and it's so fun to see the world through the eyes of your children. And Disneyland is so magical because the other interesting thing that I want to share is that Disneyland in California was closed over a year. Yeah, it was closed for over a year, which was quite remarkable. And then, as opposed to Disney World in Florida, was closed for just a couple of months. And this is what I mean when we're talking about America: is the difference between the Republican and the Democratic states. California, very, very Democratic. You've seen many more people wearing masks in California. To me, it felt very similar to Vancouver, to be honest. Everywhere you go in Vancouver, you're required to wear a face mask. If actually here in Vancouver now, you are required to show your vaccine card. You have to show proof that you are double vaccinated in order to get into a restaurant or bar or anything. So that's a very big difference. And then my parents are from Florida, and my mom is very far on the right side. She very much does not like wearing face masks. She does not like getting the vaccine. In fairness, I did make her get the vaccine because I was like, look, you really need to at your age. It's just really important. But anyways, she really enjoys living in Florida because she's like, I don't have to wear a mask here, and they don't mandate it here. And again, that's where you see. I saw somebody mentioned earlier in the comment section about living in Texas, and same thing. Texas is also a much more Republican state. They're going to be very open with their COVID policies. And that really is just the difference in about America, is how every state has their own way. There is no federal mandate. And that is what I really realized from America. There's two things. Number one, Americans are choosing to move on with COVID. It is what it is. We're going to press forward and move forward and just take it as it goes. The second thing that's interesting is what I realized is I really feel that there's a lot of our politicians are really making, China such a big deal. To the average American, they don't really care anything about China. That's kind of one of the things that I really realized when I was going back. Like for example, when you're at Disneyland or you're walking around California, I mean, Americans are very similar to Chinese in this sense. we're all concerned with our families. We're all trying to live a good life. We're trying to advance our careers. We're trying to save money. We're trying to provide a better opportunity for our children. I mean, at the end of the day, Chinese people are not thinking every day, "Oh, what about America? What about America?" Chinese people are focused on what's China doing. I mean, they're living in China. They're focusing on their life in China. Same thing in America. I mean, if you're in California, you're focusing on your local issues. You're trying to focus on your family and things like that. And I think that's where I just realized, like, there's just not a lot of good things going on in the politics. There is just really a waste of time. We have all of these talks, these debates, and you just see how the media really works to scare people. We are taught in America that China is the greatest threat in the world. And I read a really interesting article on Yahoo just yesterday, and of course, it was talking about the poster boy for this, which is Gordon Chang, and even one of the guys. And it was quite a good article on Yahoo because he basically is like, well, Gordon Chang has been saying this for 20 years, like that China's going to collapse. I mean, I guess maybe one day it will, but he said the dangerous thing is that he attended this luncheon in New York where Gordon Chang was the speaker, and he said, I just couldn't believe the people in the room. They were like listening to every word he said, almost like a gospel speaker. Like this was their evangelist that was preaching, this, all of this nonsense about China, but yet people were eating it up. They were just like, wow, this guy is he is like the savior. Like this guy is gonna, he's telling us the truth about China. And I think, it's really, really dangerous, when you have people like Gordon Chang who are just given platforms on America. Obviously, whatever I mean, he's a very smart guy because he knows how to play. He knows how to play into emotions. He can say basically he's going to take anything about China, turn it to a negative, and then say, hey, let me on Fox News because you know what I can do. I can come on there and talk a bunch of nonsense, and you know what we're going to do? We're going to scare people, and that's just really, really unhealthy, and it's really sad, to be honest. And that's again why it's really important that we start building up these channels and we continue to share some more perspective about this, because at the end of the day, if you're American, America's a sovereign country. America has a democracy. America's government has no threat from China. China is not trying to invade America. China's not trying to change America's government. There really is no influence from China in that regard. It's just preposterous to me for people to be like, well, China wants to get rid of our democracy. No, they don't. China could care less about America's democracy. The only thing China doesn't want is we don't want, China does not want interference from America into their system. And I think an interesting thing would be, for example, what if China treated America like America treated China? And I think that's a really good question to ponder. I mean, at the end of the day, everything that I see from China, and the best example was when it was the 2020 presidential election. China's director of foreign ministry came out and he said, look, we don't know if it's going to be Trump or if it's going to be Biden, but all our hope is that the Americans have a good election, they choose the leader that they want, and that we hope that leader will come to the table and that we can improve US-China relations. This is exactly what China says over and over again. It's just like, look, you guys have a different system. You do you, we're going to do us. And I think that's an interesting thing that we really need to, understand and respect. Let's go ahead and let me see. I've got some. We're doing good on time here. Let's take some questions. Anybody have any questions that you'd like to ask? It's good to get back in the live stream. I'm going to try to do some more live streams. I have some really important updates that I want to share with you guys as well. Again, it's been about 2 months since I've done a live stream, so I'm excited to be back, and it's just really, really great to be here on YouTube. So let me know if you guys have any questions here. Chinese democracy is a special kind of democracy, unlike Western democracy, which supports invading other countries. Ni hao, love from India. Really hope that US, China, India would be close allies. That would be fantastic. Yeah, let's see. You are a very positive person. I try to be. Does it ever occur to you that you're playing the piano in front of a cow? I'm not really sure what that means. So if you could explain that. Is your next destination Guangdong? I'd love to go back to China. I mean, the thing for us is, similar thing as the quarantine period. At this point, it is, it is very difficult for me to go back to China because it's if let's say for example I'm going to go back for a 2-week business trip. I got to quarantine for 3 weeks and then to go for 2 weeks and then come back to Canada. So, I mean, a 2-week trip becomes 5 weeks, and that's just really not feasible with my family dynamic. So, until I will not be going back to China until I would say at least the quarantine period gets reduced to 7 days. 7 days would be doable. But before that happens, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, most definitely not before the 2022 Winter Olympics. I hope you can come to Guangdong one day. I'm coming back. Haza, you know that my wife is from Guangzhou, the very city that you live in. And when I come back to Guangzhou, you and we are doing some vlogs, my friend. It's gonna be Haza and Cyrus on the streets in Guangdong, speaking Cantonese, speaking Mandarin, having some fun together. It's gonna be really funny. Where's my family staying, Cyrus? In Guangzhou? Well, I have family in Guangzhou. I mean, my family is here in Vancouver right now, or Richmond, where I live. Did you visit Tianjin? I have visited Tianjin once, just on a business trip, a very short time. I don't really have a lot of memories. It was just kind of, I was in Beijing for a while, and then I went over, took the train over. This is a good question. Do you like the lack of COVID restrictions in the United States? For me, I think I understand it. I would say I understand the lack of COVID restrictions in the States because, again, this is why this is one of the videos I made earlier that I think is really important. Everything that comes down to U.S.-China relations does come down to culture differences. For example, I know many Chinese people that absolutely think that China doing a 21-day quarantine is a responsible and the correct thing to do. And I know that that would not fly in America. Okay, that would not be popular in America. So you have to just respect the cultural differences. I have many parents here in our school system here that are Chinese, and they're like, "Wow, I can't believe our children are not required to wear masks 24/7 in the school." I'm upset that for example, that if you leave the country, when you come back, you don't have to quarantine for 2 weeks. Doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not. So there's a difference in culture there. So when we talk about the lack of COVID restrictions in the United States, I understand it because it's a cultural perspective. Americans are not going to want to quarantine. And that is, again, that having that freedom is more that is a very important American value. For me, I mean, I take my precautions, right? I social distance as best as I can. I wore my face mask, religiously in California. I mean, I have no problem wearing a face mask. I don't think it's a political thing. I mean, it makes sense. If there is a disease that's going around, obviously wearing a face mask is going to protect you. So I have no problem wearing a face mask. So for me, I think it just comes down to the individual. And also, I don't get offended if somebody doesn't want to wear a face mask because that's your choice. Go ahead. You do you. I'll do me. So that is how I would answer that question. Hasn't Cyrus drinking beer is something positive? That's awesome. What is your prediction about the pandemic for USA, Canada, China, and the world? Well, actually, I'm going to share with you a thumbnail that I'm going to have for my next video that's going to be going on tonight. I think you guys are going to like this. Take a look at this thumbnail. The truth about the COVID vaccine. And look at the two gentlemen that I've chosen for the thumbnail here. We've got Bill Gates and Chinese President Xi Jinping. And this is going to be the next video that's going to be debuting this evening on my channel. This will be going live at 6 p.m. Vancouver time. That is 9 p.m. New York, or that would be 9 a.m. Sunday morning in Beijing if you are in Asia. So this is the next thumbnail, and this is a really interesting video that I've made, and I want to talk about specifically the COVID-19 vaccine. I'm going to give you guys a little preview on how I open up this video. 46% of the world has received at least 1% has received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. 46% of the world's population. That's pretty remarkable, actually, that 46% of the world's population has received at least one dose. However, in low-income countries, less than 2% of people have received any doses of COVID-19 vaccine. And this is what's going to happen. So when we're talking about, how do we get to the end of this pandemic, here in Canada, we have a very high vaccination rate. Nationwide, 71% of Canadians are double vaccinated. That's a very high vaccination rate. However, until we get the lower income countries increasing their vaccination rates, that is where we will not see the end of this pandemic. And the reason that I chose Bill Gates and Xi Jinping is because both of these, Bill Gates and his foundation, they've actually been pretty instrumental in this COVID-19 vaccine research. And, and again, I wanted to really highlight this because there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there that are saying Bill Gates is the one behind COVID-19. Nonsense. Bill Gates and his foundation have been actually researching and have been helping eradicate infectious diseases for over 20 years. Bill Gates and his foundation has done a lot of great things that have actually helped the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. In addition to that, I want to talk about what China is doing because they have rolled out one of the most successful vaccine programs. In addition to that, China is now switching gears and is now donating the vaccines across countries around the world. So take a look. So please watch that video tonight. It's a really important message, and I want to share that with you as well. So that'll be the next video that you're going to see. And as far as the world, I think I do see some interesting developments. Denmark, for example, has said that they are going to switch from a pandemic to an endemic. And they are basically saying, look, we're going to, obviously COVID exists, we're still going to treat it, but we're going to choose to move on, with our lives, and we're just going to take it as it comes. And so I mean, we've seen Sweden, for example. Sweden has never really had any lockdown at all, and so that's where that's where I really want to focus. So I've really kind of come full circle on the vaccine because it's really interesting when you do your research, and I think this is a really difficult thing with the internet, because a lot of times, for example, look at Facebook, for example. I think many of you might have seen the Facebook whistleblower that came out, and this is a big thing that I really want to highlight between United States and China. In America, Facebook has become so powerful, and there's no filter on Facebook, and no one can control Facebook. You have the whistleblower that came out just last week and just said, look, Facebook knew that its algorithm was doing damage to society. There was significantly higher suicide rates in teenage girls as a result of the content that they were pushing, the algorithms, the clicks, and Facebook knew this and choose not to do anything because it's too lucrative. There's too much money involved. And what's interesting is when you take a look at, for example, this tech crackdown that we're seeing in China. That was my latest episode of Real Talk China. I debuted that last week with Chris Pereira, great Chinese executive, that really shared some good insights in. If you look at China's government is obviously, there's no tech company that is above China's government. You could actually say Facebook's above the U.S. government. In China, that would never happen. The government is, the tech companies are going to be regulated by the government. And what China's government has done is give more power back to the people as far as how they are subjugated to these algorithms. So in China, for example, if you're using Douyin, you're going to go inside and you have an opportunity to basically, sign up to say, look, I consent to being in this algorithm or not. There's ways to protect yourself. And that does not exist in America, right? You are a slave to that algorithm. And again, this is where Facebook, I mean, I've mentioned this movie many times, The Social Dilemma. This is a phenomenal movie that you should watch. It talks about the dangers of social media. And this is why, why we are seeing, just so much fake news that is out there. I've got another video that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you another thumbnail. Let me grab it real quick. It's actually on my desktop. I'm going to show this to you. And this is another video that I'm currently editing right now. And I'm going to show you this because this is really big. This is a thumbnail from a future video that's coming up soon. Shenzhen is a country, okay? Now, many of you, if you're active on Twitter, you would have seen this in the last couple of days. Many people that are watching China, Tim Pool, Ian Crossland, they had some videos coming out where they're starting to do a podcast about China. And I had to make a response video to this because the problem is that, they don't have a very deep knowledge of their subject matter. And they make so many mistakes and mistakes and mistakes. And the problem is they're just speculate the entire time. It's like, oh man, I imagine living in China would be terrible. I imagine that every single person in China hates the government. I imagine that, and I'm like, you see what they were using? I imagine, I imagine. You have nothing to bring to the table. You've never traveled to China. You have no idea about what life is like in China, and they make so many fundamental errors. And I just say, look, this is the problem. For example, when you have a guy like Tim Pool, over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, he has a voice. He has a huge voice, and now he's going to go out and branch out on a subject matter that he knows very little about. And this is what is so dangerous with the internet, where many Americans are going to listen to Tim Pool and they're going to take that as fact, and they're going to have all their facts about China completely distorted. And so this is what's really important, is to come out and say, look, you know, you need to understand things more. And this is the big thing when I talked about, for example, um, China is limiting social media for children under the age of 18. You will be required to register with your ID card. If you're under the age of 18, you're going to have 40 minutes a day to be on popular things like Douyin. Now, many people, this is what's been so fascinating here. I tell that with people in Canada and North America, and people say, geez, that's insane. China's government is controlling how its children use the internet. And it's like, that is crazy. And then inevitably somebody in our group will say, well, to be honest, they're probably going to be better off. I mean, look at our kids here in North America. Everyone's addicted to their phones. Everyone's on their phones. They're on Instagram. They're on Facebook for 2, 3, 4 hours a day. That's not healthy. And so it's almost like we want to have that restriction. Like, we realize that being on social media 40 minutes a day, probably a good thing, but we don't want to have anybody control us, because again, we have that freedom here. And in China, you have that ability to do that. And so I think the interesting thing is what you'll see is you're going to see a pivot. Okay. If you're an 18-year-old kid and you're only allowed 40 minutes a day, guess what? You're going to maximize that 40 minutes a day, and you're going to find other things to fill in your time. Maybe it's you playing sport. Maybe it's you studying more. Maybe it's you, interacting with your friends more. Maybe we're going to see, for example, one of the companies that I do work with is 5-star basketball camps in Shenzhen. This is one of the biggest urban basketball academies in the southern China area. They have 6 locations, over almost 5,000 Chinese students, and they have 60 coaches. Many of them are from America, all teaching basketball. And they've been booming. Another one is, golf. I mean, golf is booming. I mean, the market for sport is so good. Maybe you're going to start seeing more Chinese kids getting into sport. And there's no limitation on that. I had a phone call with one of my biggest clients in China. It is a golf academy that I do consulting with. And he said, because of China's change, for example, this is a good insight, because of China's change to after-school tutoring. Many of you knew that China banned after-school tutoring. Essentially what he said, this is what China's government is doing. Children need to be in school till about 5 p.m. now. And after school, all of their after-school activities, for example, now need to happen inside the school. In the last 2 months, this golf academy in Shanghai has now gone into 45 different schools in Shanghai teaching golf. Okay, they have about 25 coaches that are traveling to 45 different schools, and they're bringing nets, they're bringing mats, they're bringing golf clubs, and they're teaching these kids, after school activities, because now, they can't go to the after school tutoring. And this is what you're going to see. This is why I really advocate people, when you hear a headline about China, do not jump to conclusions. There's always a reason for what China is doing. Take a minute to step back and examine, what is going to be the long-term effect of this. My client that I was chatting with last night, he said, well, the problem right now, their biggest problem is staff. Because of China's quarantine and visa restrictions, they cannot hire coaches in. Normally what I would be doing is I would serve as a liaison, and I would be recruiting, golf coaches from North America to go to China. It's a very, there's such a need right now for these foreign golf coaches in China. I could probably hire 25 coaches today if it was easy to get a visa and to get in, and distribute them all over China, because that is how fast the sport is growing in China. And this is not just this is not just golf. We're talking golf, basketball, soccer, many sports all across China. Sport is booming in China, and there's a huge need for that. And so right now, there's basically, they're waiting for China to open up these restrictions. As soon as that happens, I mean, it's going to be a huge amount of foreigners going in, basically trying to, help meet the need. And so this is what we're seeing. This is why I want people, when you're analyzing China, you need to take a step back and look at the long-term benefit. I mean, let's think about it. What's the average American kid with no filter on the internet? They're going to be internet addicted, and you're going to see, it could potentially be beneficial for China in the long run. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. So, guys, we're coming up. I want to keep this right at around an hour today. I want to tell you a couple things. So I shared the 2 new videos that you're going to see on the channel coming up. The first one is going to be, I'm going to release tonight, is going to be about Bill Gates, Xi Jinping, and the truth about the COVID vaccine. Really fascinating video. Please watch that one. You're going to enjoy that. The next one that you're going to see is me talking about uh, these podcasters that really got a lot of information wrong about China. I'm very respectful. I just simply want to point out things, and I really want people to understand a little bit about the information that they're getting. And again, my biggest thing is to advocate, um, you know, um, reach out with people that have experience in China. And then here is a couple more updates that I've got here. I have a really interesting company that I'm working with. This is Time Kettle. And what these are the first generation AI translating ear pods. Okay. Basically, you can speak up to about 65. I think it's actually even more. Maybe I think it's over 60 different languages that you can speak here. So I've been actually. This is quite amazing. This company has raised. They did an Indiegogo funding. They raised over $1 million to research and basically back. They have over 7,000 financial backers. And Indiegogo is exactly like Kickstarter. It's basically a funding page where you can get where companies can bootstrap their funding, and they can basically get people to fund their projects. They've raised over $1 million, and I've been testing this out. These AI translation AirPods, really really cool stuff. So I'm going to be doing a review of this. I'm going to be launching. Excuse me, talking too much. I'm going to be launching that on the channel as well, and we're going to have a discount code for you guys as well. So really, really fascinating. I really love the technology. In addition to that, it's a really great way to learn the language. If you're interested in learning languages, it's actually really, really good. So that's going to be coming up on the channel probably by next Wednesday. I then have many of you know Richard Turin, who I invited on the show. He is coming back on the show. I'm actually going to be Sunday night. I'm going to be recording an episode with him. He's got some amazing insights into China. I'm really excited to bring you that episode. I've also got Sean Ryan, who is a very, very big China watcher. He's been based in Shanghai for over 20 years. Him and I are going to be connecting probably sometime in early November to record an episode. So that's going to be coming up. And I've got a very, very big announcement. This is going to be very big. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. On October 27th, I'm going to have a special video, and it is going to be a 100-day countdown to the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. And on that day, I'm going to announce a very special live stream that's going to take part. I'm going to be working with a local company here in Canada. And we're actually going to be doing a live stream on December the 16th. So mark that down on your calendar, December the 16th. We are going to have a live stream event that marks the 50-day countdown to the Winter Olympics. And in that live stream, we're going to have the Chinese ambassador to Canada will be joining the live stream. In addition to that, we are going to have Team Canada athletes and Team China athletes coming on the live stream. This is going to be a live stream event unlike any other that you've seen. I mean, I'm going to be really promoting this, and we're going to really try to get as many people in this live stream as possible. But again, we're going to have the Chinese ambassador to Canada. We're going to have Team Canada athletes and Team China athletes. And what we're doing right now is we're going to be filming some content here in Vancouver. Many of you might know that Vancouver hosted the 2010 Olympics. And so, we're going to be filming some kind of stuff here in Vancouver. It's going to be an amazing 1-hour live stream, and it's going to be an event unlike anything you've ever seen before. So that is going to be, so please mark that down on your calendar for December 16th. In a couple weeks, I'm going to have kind of like a little preview video, basically like a teaser, kind of a hype video to get everybody ready for this. So that is an event that I'm planning. As you can see, I've been very busy. We got a lot of great content that's going to be coming out on the channel, and I'm really, really happy to see again, just see all of you here in this chat. Thank you so much for your amazing support. I think we got close to about 500 people in the stream today, so pretty good after taking 2 months off. Um, uh, Oh, here's Barry Ford. Let me go back and just, we're going to end the stream here soon, guys. I appreciate it. Let me just go ahead and see some of the comments, see if I missed any things. Are there any gliding clubs in China? I was a gliding instructor. I have a love for the sport. Barry, that's a great question. I really don't know about gliding. I don't know anything about it, and I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm sorry. I don't have any insight that I could share with you on that. Um, yeah, golf is how you build guanxi relationship. It's true, absolutely. Let's see. Thank you, Cyrus. Pascal Coppins, a great guy. I really like Pascal Mansana. I'm going to reach out to him. I know I've said that for a while, but I need to send him an email. Thanks for reminding me. What will happen if the U.S. doesn't participate in 2022 Olympics in China, like in 1980? I'm going to be honest with you guys. There's no way that the U.S. boycotts the Olympics. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. And this is the reason why. The United States has spent so much money, training their athletes, and there's no reason to boycott Beijing 2022. That's the first thing. If let's just say, for example, that the United States is going to take the stance, we're not happy with China for X, Y, and Z. What you would see is you could potentially see a political boycott, and what that means is that the United States would not send any member of the government to attend. Typically, you're going to have either the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, some US government official is going to go to the Olympic Games, right? That's customary. So what you might see is a diplomatic boycott. And I don't even think that will happen. That would be worst case scenario, that you'll see a diplomatic boycott. But the big thing is that it's completely unfair to the athletes. These people have trained their entire lives for this moment. Beijing has been preparing a long time to host these events. The Olympics, what's really important, and this is what I actually have another episode that I will be um, this is another episode that I have coming up with Chris, that we recorded an episode talking about the boycott of Beijing 2022. Is that potential? Chris really brings up a good point. He said, this is an opportunity for engagement. And the biggest thing that we can do with China is that we have to increase our engagement with China. If the United States were to boycott by not sending its politicians, by not sending its athletes, you would essentially slap China in the face, and that's not going to be productive in improving your relationship. We need more examples of the United States and China sitting down and having a good dialogue. Let me give you an example. When Wendy Sherman flew to Tianjin and met with her Chinese counterparts, this is what happened. The Chinese side said, look, this is what needs to happen from the United States side. You remember do you want to know what the first one is? Does anybody of you know? We have to resolve the Meng Wanzhou situation. This has gone on too long. If we are going to improve US-China relations, it starts with Meng Wanzhou. And guess what happened? A couple weeks ago, miraculously, the United States dropped the charges against Meng Wanzhou. You guys know I've been following that case very extensively as I'm based here in Vancouver. And again, this was a great example of the United States listening, coming to the table, listening to China, and finding a way to cooperate. And this is what we need to see more of. At the end of the day, there was not enough evidence there was no evidence. I mean, I've had Richard Curlin, one of Canada's top lawyers, come on the program, and he said, this is where the United States is at. We're coming up on 3 years of this case, and the United States has zero credible evidence. They're not going anywhere with this. The ball is in the US court, and it's on them to end it. And I know a lot of people are very upset with Canada. Canada's hands were tied. I understand, Canada didn't really have a lot of power to do. They have to listen to the US because of this extradition treaty. But the thing I want people to realize is that it was in the US, it was the US that had to do this. And actually it was the best situation, the way that they resolved it. The way that they resolved the Meng Wanzhou case was actually brilliant because both sides saved face. At the end of the day, Meng Wanzhou walks away non-guilty. She's not going to be she's not going to serve a fine. They're going to maybe give a fine to Huawei. The terms of that has not been released, but basically she walks away non-guilty. That's a win for China, and for the United States side, what they got her to do is to say, yeah, I said something wrong, but saying something wrong doesn't mean that you're guilty. I mean, we all say something wrong, and it doesn't mean that I've committed a crime or I've done anything. But for the U.S. side, they can save face and say, well, look, at least Meng Wanzhou admitted that she did something wrong. Yeah, but doing something wrong and committing a felony are two different things. and there's no evidence to indicate that she committed a felony, hence why the United States had to drop the charges. And again, this is where everything starts. So this was a really good thing that I see with the US-China relations, is the fact that Wendy Sherman's visit to Tianjin did start improving. And this is why when we go back to the Olympic boycott, that can't happen, because if you boycott the Olympics, we realize you have to have a relationship with China. Anybody that is saying, you know what we should do? We should decouple from China, close everything from China. We can't. It's impossible. It's impossible because the United States absolutely needs China. The United States would fail without China. Same thing with China. China needs the United States as well. This is a mutual relationship. They need, it's a dual relationship, okay? Both sides need each other. China owns a tremendous amount of United States Treasury bonds. The trade between the two countries is so important for both countries, for both citizens. So again, I don't believe that there will be a Beijing 2022 boycott, simply because, again, you're taking 5 steps backwards. We need to have engagement. So that's my my very long answer there. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Anybody have any final questions? Yeah, talking about China, absolutely. Thanks, guys. Do you watch Jason Lightfoot's Living in China videos? I do. I follow Jason. He's had a great channel. He does a great job. I really I really enjoy his content. He does a really good job. So shout out to Jason, the Burger King. Do I agree that China is not the Soviet Union? Absolutely. No doubt about that. Yeah. Anyways, guys, so a lot of fun things coming up on the channel. So anyways, I'm going to end it there today. Thank you guys so much for your incredible support. And I want to say, if make sure you hit that like button so we can get this video trending, hopefully, and be ready for my video tonight. It's going to be a really good one. And again, I just appreciate all of your amazing support. Thank you guys, and we will see you guys soon. And I'm going to try to do more live streams. I think the next thing, Zhang Daqin, I think I just saw your email last night. I believe you just joined my Patreon, Zhang Daqin, and I saw that you are in Yorba Linda, Richard Nixon's hometown. That is so cool. I could tour you in the library. First of all, I want to say thank you for joining my Patreon. I really appreciate it. And I'm not actually. I'm back here in Vancouver, but I would love to be back down. So if I'm down in California, I'll definitely take you up on that offer. I would love to go to Richard Nixon's library. That would be fantastic. So, Mansana, talk about Li Ziqi. You actually informed me about that. I mean, she is the most incredible China vlogger. I mean, well over 10 million subscribers on YouTube, incredible content. I hope she resolves that situation with that company. Obviously, she's working with a very big production company. That's a problem. You get to that level. I mean, she has so much money that she's making, and I hope that she can resolve that. So anyways, guys, thank you so much. Zhang Daqin, thank you so much for being here as well. Everybody, thank you all for being here. Your support is just truly incredible, and I'm going to see you guys. And the next live stream that I'm going to do, I'm probably going to try to bring in Alex from Reporterfy Media. You guys probably follow his channel as well. He's doing some big things in Chongqing. And guys, we're going to do some more live streams, more interaction. Thank you all for your support, and we will see you all in the next live stream and video. Take care, guys.